All right. Hello, everybody. Good afternoon or morning, noon, wherever you happen to be. Welcome to the MAGIRT webinar, a map librarian on the road, 4 collections in 4 days. We've got Kathleen Weessies here with us. She is head of Maps and Geospatial Services, Geosciences Librarian, and Social Sciences Coordinator at Michigan State University Libraries. Take it away, Kathleen.
Thank you all. Thank you all for coming. I'm so pleased to see you all. The purpose of the presentation is to share my experience, like it says, visiting other map libraries, observing similarities and differences between them. But after I've done that, I hope it can also be a conversation. I'll be very interested to hear what other people have to say about how your views contrast to mine. I encourage use of the chat and feel free to share your thoughts. We intend to record the meeting and put it on YouTube. I will be the person who prepares the video to be posted. And so if you have any concerns or questions about that part of it, direct those to me. Okay, so 4 months ago, I went on a trip to look up close at other map libraries. I had a reason for going, but like it says, the trip did become something else along the way. So there's nothing like personal experience to shape your research. And this is not the first time I had visited other map libraries. And may I assume, I'm not unusual in that whenever I'm in a college town, if there's a map collection, I'll pop in and see it and say hello. And so over the years on these visits, I saw variations on how to solve various storage problems, map transportation problems. Is Matt here? I didn't see him before. University of Washington. I'm not sure if that's University of Iowa. I would see people using all kinds of contraptions for moving heaps of large sheets. These are all from years ago. I saw people dealing with ergonomics of handling large, heavy collections, standing on ladders, crouching on floors. And in map libraries across the country, I saw familiar brand names on the map cabinets. And that made me feel quite at home. Walking in your atlas shelves, I saw familiar gigantic books and collections of globes. And dealing with other kinds of difficult storage problems, contriving solutions to unique problems. And I saw a lot of large map sets. Every sheet on its own is a miracle of execution. And it has all the information that you need to catalog it as its very own piece. But we have the shared problem of communicating to our users how that one sheet is just a small part of a larger set. And we may or may not own the entire set. These purple marks that show MSU Libraries' ownership of Italy set might be the only sheets that were ever produced, or they might not be, and we might just have a partial set. We don't know. So, Mary Larsgaard once called map librarianship a lonely profession, and there is some truth to that. Nobody else in our organization has the same issues of dealing with these non-standard items, and map libraries generally don't have a very large staff. And so this summer, I started thinking about map libraries. If we were to think about strengthening our communication with our patrons about what we have, or if we were to collaborate with other map libraries, we would need to be able to compare our collections, which is pretty much impossible given today's tools. And I wondered, how different can the collections be? After all, we've had access to many of the same inflows: U.S. Geological Survey, Army Map Service, Federal Depository Program, and the same vendors who specialize in maps. Aside from a tendency to collect deeply in our own local areas, shouldn't the rest of our collections be fairly similar to each other? The collection I'm most familiar with is the one I've been working in for 25 years, Michigan State University. And how many maps do we have? I don't know. And I suspect no other map collection manager can really and truly say they know how many map sheets they have either. But it's not a complete guess. When we submit information to map directories, we have to give a big round number, which is based on a lot of inventory projects. In my case, it's a very educated guess. We've been conducting various projects over the years, but they usually include a bit of extrapolating, and only a percentage of our maps are cataloged. Something important I've very recently realized just in the course of this project is that about 85% of the sheets of paper in the map collection are sheets that belong to large map sets. We spend a lot of time on the pretty maps, the ones that look well in exhibits, the ones that donors like, but the vast long tail of our collection is these very detailed scientific maps. And researchers need detailed information about the world. And in order to get that, you need a lot of maps. Look at Italy again. We're going to look at Italy a lot. I just chose it as my test case. So this index diagram is for the 1 to 150 or 1 to 100,000 scale set, requires 277 sheets to cover the country. And that scale's okay for generalities. 1 mile on the ground is about, no, 1 inch on the map is about 1.5 miles on the ground. But to get really detailed, if you're like a scientist doing research, looking at invasive species or irrigation or microplastics or whatever, you want as much detail as you can get. And the born digital data is available now, but these paper maps provide the historical longitudinal ground truth. And so in order to have a much more detailed map, you need to quadruple and quadruple again the number of sheets to cover that same country. And that's just for one map set, for one point in time. So you need these sheets over and over again to get that longitudinal information. So these are the large map sets that fill our cabinets and require us to stack our cabinets up to the ceiling and make us push around rolling ladders and make administrators ask hard questions about floor space and so on. And so I decided to focus on these big map sets. I decided to pick a few countries and then travel to some other libraries and compare holdings, because we can't really use WorldCat and we can't entirely use library catalogs to really compare the collections. I wanted to see with my eyes whether a sheet in one of my sets is truly identical to a sheet in another library's collection. And so I chose 6 countries, deliberately choosing countries that had varied cartographic histories, maybe in making their own maps or having other countries mapping them. Brazil in the Americas is mostly mapped by its own government. I picked 2 Asian countries, China and Vietnam. Ethiopia, because it has such an interesting history and detailed maps of Ethiopia are hard to come by, detailed ones. Turkey also has a very interesting cartographic history. Italy was chosen very deliberately, as you've already seen, I've been using it already, because they were mapped by themselves, by the British, by the US Army, and by the Germans. And during World War II, a lot of maps were cranked out. And so I was really hoping that I would find a lot of chaotically produced maps that had poorly differentiated additioning. We'll see. But which libraries should I go to? How far could I get? This is what it came down to. How far could I get and how many collections could I visit before my research travel funds would give out and expire? And so I thought I'd go out and drive in a big loop and hit several collections. There are quite a few in my area. But I decided to stick to libraries in the Big Ten Academic Alliance because I thought if there was any chance of future collaboration, it would likely be with them, though not necessarily. It's not out of the question. My initial plan was to go out east and visit Penn State and Ohio State because they have gorgeous catalog records with lists. They have item records for every sheet and every set. Amazing. My initial plan was to just walk in and start using it like a library patron. But then about 2 or 3 weeks ahead of time, I thought, maybe I should contact them ahead of time. Yeah, maybe I should warn them or ask them about accessing their collections. And it was truly astonishing how quickly I moved from map librarian to researcher in that. As a researcher, I was focused on what I wanted to accomplish, and I barely thought about whether or not the collection would actually be open for business. And it turned out Ohio State's library was under construction, and it was completely unavailable during the time frame that I was able to travel. And so that kind of killed the whole eastern route that I was going to take. Yeah. And so I ended up with a westward loop going down to Indiana University, over to University of Illinois, up to University of Chicago, and then to Northwestern University. And this became an interesting mix. Well, I wasn't sure how long it would take, and I wasn't sure how much time I would need to spend with each collection. I had kind of ambitious ideas about what I might do while I was out there. And I wasn't even sure if I'd make it to Northwestern. It would depend on how exhausted I was. I don't know if I need 1 day, 2 days. What would I need per library? I didn't know. I deliberately didn't choose University of Michigan, Anna, because you're only an hour away. And I thought I could just do a day trip anytime and visit you anytime. Although it turned out your collection wasn't available either due to construction. And so I still haven't been down there, but I hope to at some point. We're in a new fiscal year. And the 4 libraries ended up being an interesting mix of similarity and variety. Because they're all BTAA institutions, the libraries are all serving comprehensive research institutions. 2 of them are public, 2 of them are private. University of Illinois, like MSU, serves a land-grant mission, which means service to the community in the state. So my first step before I left was to search everybody's catalog, to see what sets they own, which sets they have cataloged, that is, and see how detailed the records were. But of course, I plan to look beyond the catalog records and see what I could learn about the holdings in person. I rented a car, and in order to keep costs down, I asked for a small car. And I definitely got a small car. When I went to pick it up, they said, well, it's this Mazda Miata or nothing. This is all we have. And it was really, really small. It was, if you've ever watched the Winter Olympics, it was like riding in a luge sled down the interstate. And sorry to belabor the point, but the car was really small. And this is my rolling laptop bag, which just fit into the trunk. And there was 0 space behind the seats, and so I had to pack really light. You can see the gift bags I had prepared for the other map libraries. Okay, one last slide about that. This is how big a USGS topo sheet is compared to the trunk opening. There we go. Okay, off I go. 5-hour drive down to Bloomington, Indiana, left at 6 a.m. Monday morning. The map library is inside their main library, Herman B. Wells Library. I studied the website ahead of time, and I emailed Teresa Quill and learned that the maps are out in an entirely open area. They're accessible anytime the building is open, which was great for me. My original plan, which turned out to be an unrealistic fantasy, was to stay in the building until it closed at 8 p.m. This was summertime, remember, and so the hours were shorter. But thankfully, due to the lack of power outlets in the area of the map cabinets, my laptop battery gave out after about 5 or 6 hours. And so I had to leave around 6 p.m. and go get some dinner. And that was that. But I saw a lot of friendly and familiar sights. I was pleased to see that Indiana University, like MSU, had early on adopted the AGS call number system. This was because when the big deluge of maps started flowing into libraries right after World War II, the Library of Congress had not finished the G classification. we need G 3000 through G 9999 for the maps, and that wasn't published until the 1950s. And so a lot of university libraries early on had to choose something else. And so I was able to see their cataloged sets were in Library of Congress, and the uncatalogued sets were in the AGS call number system. Okay, so their catalog records beautifully list every sheet in every set, the sets that are cataloged, that is. But it tells you that you own the sheet, but it doesn't necessarily say what edition is that sheet. And if I have these same sheets, are they truly identical to each other? Can we consider the sheets to be interchangeable for collection collaboration purposes? And so, I had a various bag of toys that I brought with me. One of them was a micrometer, and I took some samplings of measurements of paper thickness I could compare and try to figure out, is it the same edition? Does it seem like it was printed even in the same print run? You can see this photo is actually from an MSU map, but I did take it down to India. I took it to all the schools and did that. I don't know if anything will come of that. I did collect a lot of data, and I haven't done anything with it yet. But I realized that it would take a long, long time to gather a very substantial amount of information. Okay, so here's a set of Vietnam at 1 to 100,000, has a lot of French around the collar. And on the right, we can see an uncatalogued set of Chinese-made maps of China, still with the AGS call number on them. Ultimately, I saw a lot of maps, a good, robust collection of all 6 countries. Well, no, not Ethiopia. A lot of cataloged sets, some uncatalogued sets. I saw index diagrams in the drawers, which mark which sheets the library owns of each set. And I had a good time looking at all the variety of property stamps and how they varied over the years as the map collection moved from place to place. So clearly Indiana had participated in the Library of Congress duplicate map program, and I saw lots of stamps of those. And they attended enough times to gain deep collections in international maps. Looking back on the visit, IU stood out in accessibility of the collection. I was glad that I was able to get to the collection with a minimum of staff intervention. And for the widest range of hours compared to the other schools. And so IU wins the coveted Thumbs Up Award for access. There it is, Teresa. Very good. Okay, so the next day, I had about a 3-hour drive to Champaign, Illinois, which I undertook early Tuesday morning so I could get there as early as possible within the time window that the collection was available. And the collection is inside their absolutely enormous main library. I'd never been to Illinois before. That's a big building. So the 2 rooms allocated for the map collection are not large enough to house their full collection. And most of the international topographic map sets are in remote storage. And I learned that when I contacted Jenny Marie Johnson ahead of time, that I needed to be able to articulate exactly which sheets I wanted to see of which sets, so they could request them and have them delivered to the main library. And so I requested a lot of maps, and I gave them quite a lot of work. And thank you very much to the staff there for all the work you did for me. But when things are in remote storage, it means that it has to be cataloged so it can be paged. And so every map set had a catalog record, but instead of an item record for each sheet, it's an item record for each folder of maps. And each folder contains a range of sheet numbers. I saw a lot of maps for my target countries, including maps from the Library of Congress duplicate map program and the Army Map Service depository. And I gathered a lot of micrometer measurements on the paper. But the real prize was when Jenny pulled out their map library annual reports dating back to 1944 and a very thick file of records from their participation in the Army Map Service depository. It was wonderful. I found 3 lists of the participating libraries at different points in time. And I even found an example of a real AMS shipping manifest. And so my phone was very busy that day. I took pictures of over 100 pages, maybe a couple hundred pages of this documentation, which is terrific. So clearly, I need to recognize and award the University of Illinois Map Library for their amazing documentation. So early Wednesday morning, I hit the road and drove about 2 to 2.5 hours to Chicago for my 3rd stop. The map library is inside the Joseph Regenstein Library, and they have a large room. All the map cabinets match. They're the same color, and they're all stacked to the same height, which is really something. It's quite nice. Brendan White took these pictures for me because I forgot to take pictures of the space. I only took about 1 million nerdy photos of map sheets, but none of the aisles. So I had searched the catalog ahead of time and found the sets are cataloged. I believe they're all cataloged. But instead of sheet listings, most or many of the sets have a JPEG of an index diagram linked from the catalog record. And so this is Italy again at 1 to 100,000. There's the big JPEG of the whole country. And if you're, looking very closely, you can see the orange dots represent which sheets the library owns in that set, which is helpful when you're interested in a region. You can see the proximity of the sheets to each other. What was the most unusual about this collection is that it predates the deluge of maps that came flowing into university libraries directly after World War II. The University of Chicago made a concerted effort to collect large international topographic map sets before that, in the 30s for sure, maybe earlier than that. University of Chicago has not participated in the Library of Congress duplicate map program. And so the maps with those gigantic, garish Library of Congress property stamps aren't seen here in their collection. Their maps are all very demurely labeled. The picture here shows typical markings that are on their maps. I didn't count the number of map sheets, though I could if I were to open up all those JPEGs with the index diagrams. I'd be able to figure out exactly what they have to compare. And their award is for their very large, very clean, very well organized library. And this is the first one I went to that had a large format scanner right there readily available to use. Indiana has one available, but I don't know the mechanics of actually gaining access to it or anything. And I didn't do that while I was visiting. But Sam scanned several maps for me at Chicago. Thank you. After leaving Chicago, I drove up to Evanston that same evening in order to get a hotel up near Northwestern because the hotels near University of Chicago are so expensive. But the drive up Lakeshore Drive it's only 20 miles, but it seriously took like 1.5 hours to get there. Of course, it was rush hour, which is a foolish time to go. But I got up there, got my hotel, and then Thursday morning, I arrived on Anzald's doorstep. Their map collection is in the basement of their main library, which they call University Library. There's people joke sometimes about map collections needing to be in the basement because of the weight of the cabinets, but this was the first collection I'd been to on this visit that it actually was in the basement. At MSU, it's not in the basement either, or in University of Michigan. The collection is beautifully organized, and the facility is so nice. You can see all these cabinets have padlocks on them. So it's kind of in an open space, but you need staff assistance to get into the drawers you want. And every drawer has a beautiful folder labeled beautifully. Everything looks terrific. And their end caps, oh my goodness. Thank you, Anne, for sending me these photos. I forgot to photograph them while I was there, but they have these huge vinyl stickers on their compact shelving end caps. And so there's some illustrations from 19th century atlases. And then on the left there, you can see that giant geologic map of North America made by the U.S. Geological Survey, maybe about 20 years ago or so. And it's just huge here on this end cap, and it looks fantastic. And then there's another 19th century illustration of rivers. So none of the map sets at Northwestern are cataloged. I saw very detailed, large map sets of all the countries I was interested in. But I didn't know that without, maybe I could have asked Anne and she could have told me, but I went in person and I was able to see them all. Every single map set has an index diagram. You can kind of see in the picture here that it's stapled into a manila folder, and then all the folders are in this filing cabinet. And so every index diagram is marked, showing exactly which sheets the library owns, all wonderfully organized. So wonderful facility. Bonus award for scanner on site. They had an oversized scanner and a flatbed scanner, and Anne made several scans for me of your maps. That was great. So then Friday I drove home. Back through Chicago traffic again. Oh, that was something. I found that every map library is doing its best to serve patron and collection needs within the administrative constraints they've been given and the size of their staff. I definitely saw evidence of some collection duplication, but it's really impossible to know without really scrutinizing the sheets to see if they're the same edition, same printing. Are they truly, like when you have two books that have the same ISBN, you can be confident that they're essentially interchangeable, but we can't really do that with maps. I also saw a lot of evidence, much variation in sheet holdings. It was not like, well, we had the same inflows, therefore, the collections are all pretty much the same. It wasn't like that at all. Every library has unique and scarce items that other collections don't have. And there's a lot of fertile ground for further research. This ambitious idea I had about inventorying everyone's map sets, even in a cursory way, just had to be abandoned. I took those samples and measurements and I could revisit the holdings projects in the future. But seeing the collections in person was very valuable. I'm organizing a sabbatical proposal that will have me exploring some of these questions next year. But however, my work should be shaped by input from the community. Let's see. Okay, and so before we move on to the discussion part, I wanted to say special thank you to all the people who helped me. I did meet a staff person very briefly at Indiana, but it didn't really go past a quick introduction, so I didn't list her here, but these are the people who helped me out at the 4 libraries. So I hope to hear some comments. How do you feel about those award categories, for instance? I just made them up kind of organically, but are those the things that we should be most prized? I guess I'm going to open up the floor for conversation. I'm glad we're doing this now and not fumbling around in front of the audience.
Mm-hmm.